everyone. So now we will discuss about environmental impact assessment. So there are actually if you see there are several domains in the environment, in the overall sustainability. If we see, so those are physical domains in the environment, those are ecological domains, those are socio-economic domains, and they have subdomains inside air, water, land, water, earth, etc. Then we have a flora, fauna, other species and life forms, etc. Then we have a socio-economic the domains. Inside that we have a social, economic and cultural subdomains. So and actually what is the actually job of this EIA? Why do we need this EIA, environmental assessment? So an important actually this is EIA is an important procedure for ensuring that the likely effects of new development on the environment are fully understood and taken into account before development is allowed to go ahead. So it is actually preemptive, actually a measure which takes care of calculations and analysis of any possible, actually plausible effect which an development process in a development activity is going to actually exert impact on the surrounding and overall ecosystem. So it takes care of with the help of a preemptive actually measures and calculations. So it's a systematic process of identifying future consequences of a current or proposed action. So that is what it actually does, and that is actually main objective of conducting EIA. So it takes care of it actually results into setting up accountability. It establishes a credibility. It checks a cost effectiveness. It actually proposes a flexible ways to do things. It checks the practicality. It checks a participation. It involves actually people and different stakeholders. It actually talks about a certainty and then the other stuff which are going to certainly happen and all that. So it talks about in a finite terms. It actually establishes a transparent actually system of establishment, how if we are going to undertake any a development procedure, any a developmental activity. So what are the plausible actually reactions or the repercussions which that place is going to face. So this EIA actually conducts this analysis, a pre-hand this analysis to understand all of those things, and it helps in taking up an informed decision. So what an EIA can do, what this environmental impact assessments can do, so they actually are helpful in modifying and improving the actually plan and the design of that the developmental activity what we are going to undertake. It helps in ensuring a efficient resource uses. So it improves the actually usefulness. It improves the efficiency of resources, resource consumption. It enhances actually social aspects. It takes care of the a society. It takes care of the a local community and the people, and how this development activity is going to affect them in several ways. It helps further in identifying measures for monitoring and managing impacts. So it helps in actually understanding it helps in drawing numbers. In numbers you can understand how bad or how good is going to be and what are the different kind of impacts, plausible impacts in the several different domains what we discussed in the previous slide. It helps actually in taking us informed decisions, because once we are aware of this kind of effects are going to happen once the development process actually undertakes, then we can take some further preemptive measures to minimize those impacts. For example, if there is a possibility that a certain kind of a migration may be needed, some kind of a relocation will be necessary for setting up some a developmental activity, then the rehabilitation actually processes can be actually taken care of to handle actually such situation and enable actually those people to establish somewhere else. So these are the actually informed decision making things which can be actually taken care of with the help of a EIA. The next comes a providing a justification for a proposal. So if there is any like a developmental activity which is proposed, So we can have actually some justification in terms of like what are the actually tentative like advantages and disadvantages the place is going to like face. Next, if you see like it is evolving over like a period of time, like there are some if you see some guidelines, some rules and regulations in place, there are some like acts established by the Honorable Parliament of India. So in that one, if you see like there are like a environmental protection and control, pollution control actually rules and regulations are there are some several bodies also like CPCB is the Central Pollution Control Board. There is like a NGT, National Green Tribunal. So these are actually similarly like these are the several actually institutional, there are the these are the several like a constitutional actually bodies, organizations which actually take care of like such assessments, which actually take care of if there is something goes wrong with the as a resultant of some developmental activity in any part of the India. So they actually come for the rescue of that place. They actually provide like a legal solutions. They provide actually with the corrective measures to cope up with the repercussions which are have happened due to like a such like a bad developmental activities. So you can see there is like this Environmental Protection Act 1986. Okay, there is like another like a set of like a rules, environmental protection rules from like a 1986. And there is section 5 which talks about like environmental protection rules 1986, prohibitions and restrictions on the location of like industries carrying on of like processes and operations in different areas. And there is like an environmental assessment like in 1994. This talks about discharge internationally agreed obligations under like a Rio Declaration. So there are like several international declarations also, which our country as a like a responsible country has kept on actually agreeing to, and it complies with those actually rules and regulations and mandatory like requirements which these actually protocols and these declaration actually offer for the like countries to adopt. So these as we are all aware of, all of these rules, regulations and declarations, they work in the like a betterment of like improving the atmosphere, improving the like ecological balance of this planet, not just one country, including like the entire planet. It helps in actually developing like sustainable models. So India also actually follows those declaration and has instituted several like rules and regulation in compliance with those actually preambles. So if you see like a EIA like a 2006 preamble, what it says, the copies of the said notification were made available to the public on 15th September like a 2005. So and standard practice in this actually sort of like activities is to involve like a stakeholders, and the major stakeholder in any of like such environmental activities is the public itself, because it's all all of these developmental activities are for the public and is for like their benefit, and it is also supported by largely from the like a taxpayers money, from the like a public's money. So in a way or any like developmental activity is responsible and is answerable to the public. So public must actually preview such like environmental assessment assessments, and they must actually approve of before going ahead with the developmental activities. So as a like a honor to that actually philosophy, this preamble was actually made available for the like a viewing from the like a public on 15th September 2005. So an objection and suggestions received in response to the like above mentioned like a draft notification. So there were like duly considered by the like a central government, and several like editings and corrections were actually carried out. So central government body hereby directs that on and from the date of its like a publication, that is 14th of September 2006, okay, the required construction of new projects or activities, or the expansion or modernization of existing projects or activities listed in the schedule to this notification entailing like a capacity addition with change in process or and or technology shall be like undertaken in any part of India only after the prior environmental clearance from the central government, or as the case may be by the state level environmental impact assessment authority duly constituted by the central government under subsection 3 of section 3 of the said act, in accordance with the procedure specified hereinafter in this notifications. So it clearly states over here, this preamble clearly actually makes its a point over here. Any like a developmental activity which is proposed in any corner of India, in any state of India, has to go undergo through this clearance of this environmental assessment authority and get their approval. Only after obtaining that approval they can go ahead with the execution of that actually proposal. And if need be, there may be some corrections and editings needed, which must be actually carried out before actually going ahead with the development that activity. So if you see like as a summary of this EIA like a process and roughly like the timelines, if you see, so it starts from the submission of application, which is form number 1, and it is submitted along with the like a preliminary like reports, such as like some assessments, some like a surveying, and some like a data collection, okay, and etc. And then it goes further like a screening as a like a stage 1. So it decides like a based on the like a project like in different categories, and then it checks the like a scoping income. It comes up with the like a terms of like a reference TOR, and then it goes for the like a preparing like a preliminary EIA report. And after that preliminary EIA report, it goes for the like a consultation from like a different stakeholders, public being the major stakeholder, and a different other like researchers, NGOs, and several other like independent environmental protection agencies, etc. And after consultation with the like CPCB or state pollution control boards, after consulting with the expert like committees, then it goes for the like appraisal. If there are any corrections needed, that corrections are actually advised to be carried out. Further the revised proposal goes for the final actually decision, and hereinafter they actually go ahead with the their actually approval. So what are the actually benefits of EIA? So it helps actually in establishing like a sound and sustainable like a environmental system. It helps in complying with the like rules, laws, and like standards which are given by like various agencies. It helps in like saving the resource capital. It helps in saving the like a natural like a resource capital of this planet, and on the operating costs. It helps in reducing like a time and cost for the approval, because it's a one actually centralized actually body for undertaking like any like such approval activities. It actually increases the project acceptance, because once it has gone through the rigorous process of this EIA evaluation from the like authority, one can actually feel like satisfied that yes, this project once approved can be actually not that bad, and can be actually taken as a like a accepted level of like a acceptance in the like a society and the community. And it offers like a better protection of the environment and the human health. So this is the actually overall objective of actually establishing like this environmental impact assessments, so that sustainable actually model of like a growth and development can be actually practiced in our like a real life. So in an overall sense, if you see what could cause the damage to our like a planet, so on the x dimension, if you see, it's like a on the spatial scale, whether it is local or global. And on the y scale, on the y dimension, if you see, it is the rate of the onset, on the at the rate of which how fast it can actually impact. So from slow to fast. So for example, a weird example actually asteroid impact is given at the top of it. So this has the actually potential to work from like a local to the global level, and it could actually, if it falls at any like unfortunate day, god forbid, it can actually cause like extensive damage, and it can happen actually at a very fast rates. So compared to that scale, if we see the other not so noticeable actually impacts also, if we see, which we do not actually see unless we experience it on our own. We do not actually generally actually take care of these actually impacts, such as like a flooding, such as like a deforestation, overfishing, such as the loss of the like a biodiversity, like a components of like several species is, so these are also like a such like a indicators which are actually happening around us, which are actually destroying the planet bit by bit, every day, every year, every decade. And the ecological balance of earth, the biocapacity of earth is in a serious actually compromising situation right now. And how it can be actually bring back to its normalcy. So this is the actually purpose of putting up this figure over here. The methods such as like a economic sustainability, the methods such as like a EIA, they are there actually, they are framed for actually developing a sustainable model of actually growth and development, and we must actually comply to those. Well, such charts we have seen like a n number of times, like how the like a annual like a temperature, how the overall like a global warming is increasing like a on a like a yearly basis. Well, it's increasing only, so it's a major actually matter of like a concern. And how like a greenhouse actually gas emissions are actually taking place, that is also a major actually a concern, which is the actually causing actually factor for like a such a like after effects, such as like a overall like a temperature increase and global warming, etc. So there is another actually a model of like how to calculate actually impact. So with this the analogy of this word itself, the researchers they have actually given this concept like I is equal to PACT. So I is like the impact, P is the like a population multiplied by affluence multiplied by intensity of like a resource consumption, and that is again multiplied by inefficiency of the technology. So impact equals to a multiplication of all of these like put together. So this is actually analogy the researcher has actually spoken about here, and they have spoken about the dematerialization also. So what is dematerialization? So like going ahead with the actually reduction in the like consumption, going ahead with the multiple uses of the resources. If you have to use that resource, then you go for the like a multiple uses of it. If you have to go for the uses of that resources, then you go for the like a minimal actually energy consuming a process or the way for like utilizing it or consuming it. So this is the actually a concept of like the process of like dematerialization, which could be actually helpful in reducing this overall like impact on this planet. Yeah, so this is actually an illustrative actually diagram of this impact figure over here. And here in this table you can see like how the comparison of resource consumption levels for groups with low, average and high ecological footprints have actually taken place over the time. So the first column suggests about like a consumption measures, that is like a daily calorie like a supply, then like a meat consumption in kg per year, living space requirement in per square meter, and then the people per household, number of like a people. Okay, and then home energy use, then motor vehicle travel kilometers per year, then air travels, then CO2 emission a ton per year. So in this one, if you see that the fair earth share actually combination talks about like a consuming just the resources which can be supplied by like the one earth unit are the actually figures given over here. Like for example, daily calorie supply. So the fair actually earth share factor wise, if we go, so this is like a 2424 calories per day. And if we go for like the world average which is happening right now, so we have already like exceeded the biocapacity of this planet, and we are standing right now at the requirement of like 1.5 planet, 1.5 earths. And then the high consumption actually rate, we require like 3 planets. Okay, so this is the actually indicative chart which talks about the consumption actually rate at which it has grown over the years. So on this slide related to the previous one, it talks about like a characteristics of industrial and sustainable agriculture. So what are those actually factors, or what are those traits which we can associate from like a industrial like a agricultural system and then like a sustainable agricultural systems? So well, till now this in the post like a industrial era, so this industrialized way of agriculture has taken place, and a lot of land, a lot of like a barren land, lot of like other like forms of land, they have been converted for like a crop cycles. They have been like used with like a heavy amount of like a fertilizers for the increased yield, and several other like in the for the cattles to boost like their actually output for like a milk and meat, etc. They have been given with the several like a hazardous like a medicinal like a boosters shots, etc., to increase the overall like amount of their like products. Okay, so these are all the like industrial ways of actually agricultural system, and what actually sustainability suggests is the like a sustainable agriculture practices. So we will see over here what are those actually distinction points. So on the type of economy, if you see, the again industrial agriculture actually talks about a market based focused on like a national and international markets. So the market and benefits and actually creating like a economic wealth is the major actually criteria. But on the other hand, in the sustainable agriculture system, the economically and ecologically efficient system, which is like oriented mostly on the local and regional markets, socially responsible, ecologically like a friendly. So these are the actually keywords associated with the sustainable agricultural systems. So evidently it talks about actually a responsible way of actually using this agricultural like a practices in a responsible way of actually consuming land for like a such like a things it talks about. And on the type of operation, if you see this actually operations are like taken care of by management companies, corporate structure. And on the other hand, on the sustainable agricultural system, it promotes actually an independent, family oriented or community based actually participation, where actually the social aspects, the social value systems are also actually taken care of, not just the monetary part. On the third actually criteria, if you see the size of the operation, so usually actually industrial agriculture happens at the very large scale, generally like a 500 hectares or even more. And on the other hand, like sustainable agriculture actually takes place on a smaller level, like a individual like a farmers households, based on their own like a individual capacity, they go for actually these the sizes of these operations actually take place. On the inputs front, if you see like a compared to like a what are the comparisons. So in the industrial actually agricultural system, high levels of like industrial inputs like biocides and nutrients in large quantities, fertilizers, so these are the actually kind of stuff are given in the industrial agriculture. On the other hand, in the second one, a few are like a no industrial inputs, or only the natural inputs ecologically and integrated like a pest management are given, which are very rooted to that place. There may be like a several types of like a conventional knowledge is actually utilized in handling actually agriculture at the local level. So that is the philosophy which goes along with the culture of that place into the practice of the agriculture also. On the next front, if you see on the ecological like impacts, so the major source of like a surface water like a pollution, it becomes like a major source for like a groundwater contamination also, because there is a huge amount of like a pesticides, insecticides and even fertilizers are actually utilized. So they end up actually poisoning our ecological balance of the water and the top layer of the soil. Okay, they actually end up eliminating actually the habitat of the smaller like a microorganisms, and smaller like a small scale like microbes and other like insects, which usually actually live in the like agricultural farms. On the other hand, if we see this sustainable agricultural system, it promotes actually low impact and it uses actually diversity of production, including like grains, fruits, vegetables, herbs. So it actually grows like a variety of agricultural produce, not just the one, not just it promotes the cash crop only, it promotes like other forms of like crops also, to have a actually a balance in terms of like nutrients also. Because we are all aware of like how the legumes actually help in adding like a nitrogen to the like a topsoil, and how actually the other like a crops such as like a rice, paddy and these things and wheat, they actually consume like a large amount of like nutrient from the soil. So having actually a circle of actually different like a crop cycles, different actually grains and cereals, fruits and vegetables, it actually helps maintaining the nutritional value in the topsoil. So sustainable agriculture actually promotes actually such practices. And on the next front, if you see on the government intervention, there are a lot of like subsidies and incentives available for like a industrial scale agricultural production. And on the sustainable agricultural system, if you see like a government support for the production of non-market goods, it supports like a services, ecological and social, elimination of unsustainable input and production of subsidies. So the government helps in both the actually entities. And in the recent years, government's intervention has increased, the government support system has increased in the to support actually the small scale like a farming activities and farmers. The last front actually talks about social, what are the social impacts of these two types of like agricultural practices. So here we see like the first one actually depopulates like a rural communities, which leads to degradation of like a social infrastructure, the closure of like schools, collapse of like a housing market. So we have seen actually some like such impacts of like a industrial level like agricultural practices, because they employ a wide variety of like motorized and automatic systems. In turn, they employ little like a local labor force, man force, to work on these farms and these like places. So in turn, actually, they end up kind of a forced migration kind of phenomena, causing the local people to vacate these places and move away to the other like greener areas. So these are actually some of the after effects in the like a social actually area for the like industrial agriculture. On the other hand, if we see like how the sustainable agriculture actually supports actually such activities, so which is actually beautiful to have actually a decentralized model of like economic like growth and development processes. So it helps actually servicing like a local market. It provides like stability to the rural communities and societies. It provides like economic like a diversification, maintains cultural and landscape values, regional identity and traditions also. So we see there are actually n number of like value systems which are also like sustained and encouraged by actually sustainable agricultural system. So this is beneficial in like a multiple ways. Like it helps actually the local market, it helps grow actually the diversity of the product, because the industrial agriculture mainly focuses on the cash crops or the crops which are necessary for like the market, or which are in a huge demand. They do not actually necessarily will be taking care of like supplying all sorts of goods. Okay, they may not be actually taking care of like maintaining the ecological balance, or they are maintaining the nutritional actually value in the soil. They may be using like a booster actually fertilizers and other supplements for the high yield of their crop. But actually sustainable agriculture actually promotes the local knowledge, it promotes the, like a local vernacular practices of the place, and that is why it is beneficial for the places. So what are the tools and techniques for like if we see like a overall, like if we want to like have an like a assessment, have a like a impact, like environmental impact assessment in like a different scenarios. So if we see like this particular illustration over here, it talks about like a tools and techniques for like a integrated design like a overview. So there are several types of like assessment methods and analysis like systems which are given over here in like XYZ dimensions. So on the X dimension, if you see, it talks about like the product life cycle. So on that front, it has like a scales of like a fabrication, a scale of like a assembly, uses, and the end of the life, that is like a retirement or the disposal period. On the Y dimension, if you see, it talks about analysis and improvement. So it talks about majorly like a decision making capacity, the dimension of a part of this thing. And on the Z dimension, if we see, it talks about like a design process. So what are the like a problem specification, what is the like a conceptual design, what is the like a embodiment like design, what is like a design detailing, and what is like a evaluation, etc. So at these like XYZ actually coordinates, the methods such as like a DFD design for like a disassembly, and DFS design for like a serviceability, DFR like design for the recovery, DFA that is designed for like a assembly, DFM design for like a manufacturing, QFD like a quality function deployment, LCA that is like a life cycle assessment, SLCA that is like a streamlined like a LCA, and LCCA that is like a life cycle cost analysis. So these are the actually different assessment methods and different actually approaches for evaluation and even like a planning. These are actually placed to suit which actually suit these actually particular combinations. So this actually gives us a comprehensive idea which kind of tool or which kind of actually approach would be actually working more suitably in which kind of like a scenario. So this is very actually beneficial for our understanding. So we as a, like a designer and architect and engineers can actually apply these tools in the appropriate actually situations. So lastly, what are the like environmental objectives and design strategies I would like to talk about over here is the like a environmental objectives to be achieved in the like a product design with the like a strategy and product related or environmental objective like a concerns can be summed up into two principal actually categories over here. The first being like a conservation of resources, recycling, energy recovery. Okay, consist of like optimizing the use of resources required to produce or render the service of that product. Okay, so these are the actually philosophies we actually apply for actually conservation for the purposes. And on the prevention part, like a prevention of the pollution, prevention of the like a waste, prevention of like the other like a forms of the impact, we must work with the consistent eliminating or reducing the causes of the pollution and other impact generated by the product over its entire life cycle. So these are the two actually major objectives we see over here, like for the conservation and for the prevention, and accordingly actually we can choose the appropriate like action points. So this is for now. So thank you everyone.